Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Everything Yesterday This Morning. I have another long episode for you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. Biden blamed the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's war in Ukraine for troubling economic news as he and his administration went on the defensive over mounting inflation, rising gas prices. Whew. Biden delivered a speech at the White House yesterday that was advertised as a focus on his plan to fight inflation. While he briefly spoke about inflation, he spent the majority of his time attacking Republicans for a plan put out by the head of the Senate's GOP campaign arm rather than laying out any new proposals to combat the worst inflation the country has seen in 40 years. Biden said combating inflation is his top domestic priority and acknowledged families all across America are hurting. They're frustrated. I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. There's a lot we have to do, Biden said. Like, Congress needs to pass my $33 billion plan to fund Ukraine through September. During his speech, Biden pointed to several steps his administration has already taken to bring down gas prices, like emptying our strategic petroleum reserves with no plan to replenish them, and enacting emergency measures to expand biofuel sales during the summer. He also cited his proposals to raise taxes on billionaires and other super wealthy Americans, and lowering prescription drug prices for millions of Americans by letting Medicare negotiate drug prices, saying those ideas could help bring down inflation. Or, here's a novel thought, super unexpected coming from me, you could dissolve the central bank and remove the ability for the Fed to print trillions of dollars, making our currency worthless. Biden went on to say, we control all three branches of government. Well, we don't really. CNN conducted a poll that showed fewer than a third of Americans think the Democratic Party's economic vision aligns with their own. Gas prices have also jumped to a fresh record high, with the national average for a gallon of regular gas at $4.37, a 17-cent spike in a week. Last week, the Federal Reserve announced it was taking aggressive action to lower inflation by raising interest rates by 0.5 percentage point. Something not done in 22 years, but did they repeat the sins of their past? It's all written in Ron Paul's book, End the Fed. Biden spent much of the speech repeatedly hammering MAGA Republicans and the extreme ultra MAGA policies he says they would enact if their party wins control of Congress in the midterm elections. Biden said, my plan is to lower everyday costs for hardworking Americans and lower the deficit by asking large corporations and the wealthiest Americans to not engage in price gouging and pay their fair share in taxes. Because punishing those who worked hard to benefit those who don't is totally not socialism. The Republican plan is to increase taxes on the middle-class families, let billionaires and large companies off the hook as they raise profits, raise prices, and reap profits at record amounts. And it's really that simple. Okay, Joe, put your money where your mouth is. Abolish the federal income tax. Allow every person who earns their money to keep their money. Take care of those hardworking middle-class families and allow them to keep every penny they earn. I'm not holding my breath. Parents across the United States are scrambling to find baby formula because supply disruptions and a massive safety recall have swept many leading brands off store shelves. Months of spot shortages at pharmacies and supermarkets have been exacerbated by the recall at Abbott, which was forced to close its largest U.S. formula manufacturing plant in February due to contamination concerns. Yesterday, the FDA said it was working with U.S. manufacturers to increase their output and streamlining paperwork to allow for more imports. For now, pediatricians and health workers are urging parents who cannot find formula to contact food banks and doctors' offices. They warn against watering down formula to stretch supplies or using online recipes. Trying to keep formula in stock, retailers, including CVS and Walgreens, have begun limiting purchases to 3 containers per customer. Nationwide, about 40% of large retail stores are completely out of stock, up from 31% in mid April. More than half of the United States are seeing out of stock rates between 40 and 50%. Baby formula is particularly vulnerable to disruptions because just a few companies account for almost the entire U.S. supply. Industry executives say the constraints began last year as the pandemic led to disruptions in ingredients, labor, and transportation. Where do those ingredients for baby formula come from? Supplies were further squeezed by parents stockpiling during the lockdowns. In February, Abbott recalled several major brands and shut down its Sturgis, Michigan factory when federal officials concluded 4 babies suffered bacterial infections after consuming formula from the facility. 2 of those infants died. When the FDA inspectors visited the plant in March, they found lax safety protocols and traces of the bacteria on several surfaces. None of the bacterial strains matched those collected from the infants, however, and the FDA hasn't offered an explanation as to how the contamination occurred. It should be noted that Abbott says its formula is not likely the source of the infection, though the FDA says its investigation continues. Chicago-based Abbott said it is increasing its production at other facilities to fill the gap, including flying in formula from a plant in Ireland. The shortages are especially dangerous for infants who require specialty formulas due to food allergies, digestive problems, and other conditions. Unfortunately, many of those very specialized formulas are only made in the United States at the factory that had the recall, and that's caused a huge problem for a relatively small number of families. After hearing concerns from parents, the FDA said last month that Abbott could begin releasing some specialty formulas not affected by the recalls on a case by case basis. It's unclear when the Abbott plant will reopen. The FDA said the company is still working to rectify findings related to the processes, procedures, and conditions. Other infant formula makers are meeting or exceeding capacity levels to meet current demand, the agency said. Yeah, it sure looks like with all the shortages that we're experiencing, you guys are meeting the current demand. Among other steps, though, the FDA said it is waiving enforcement of minor product labeling issues to increase availability of U.S. and imported products. Labeling. Your babies may starve, but by goodness, the labels will look good when you finally get their food. The U.S. House voted overwhelmingly Tuesday to provide an additional $40 billion in economic, humanitarian, and military assistance to Ukraine as its troops continue fighting back against Russia's invasion. The legislation released just hours before the vote, in other words, nobody fucking read it, now goes to the U.S. Senate, where leaders hope to quickly send the bill to President Biden's desk, though procedural hurdles in that chamber could slow the process. House Appropriations Chair Rosa DeLauro said in a statement, quote, "Lawmakers have a moral responsibility to deliver this support to help end the grievous loss of life, hold Putin and his cronies accountable, and protect global democracy." If you'll remember, this bill was less than 2 days ago only $33 billion. We've added another $7 billion and shaved months from the time frame that it would cover. Guess who's reading this trash later today? That would be me. The vote was 368 to 57 to pass the bill. How many of those 368 representatives actually read this legislation? I'd love to see a guess on the numbers. This is the second aid package since Russia invaded Ukraine just over 10 weeks ago. and would bring the total U.S. investment in a conflict that has become something of a proxy war for democracy. That is a direct quote from the article. That's not me. To nearly $54 billion. U.S. House Democrats increased that funding request from Biden by billions of dollars, saying they believed more money was needed for military and humanitarian aid. Well, when you're not footing the bill for the checks that you're writing and you have the Federal Reserve that can just counterfeit money, why not blow another $7 billion? Drops in the bucket, y'all, just drops in the bucket. Interestingly, the breakdown of the bill is fascinating. U.S. Department of Defense gets $8.7 billion to resupply stocks of U.S. military equipment that have gone to Ukraine. $6 billion in security assistance for Ukraine's military and national security forces. $3.9 billion for European command operations. The U.S. State Department would receive $13.9 billion for refugee assistance, food aid, economic assistance, combating human trafficking, and military financing. Another $4.4 billion would go to the U.S. Agency for International Development to provide food aid to people around the world who are experiencing food shortages as a result of Russia's war in Ukraine. The funding was originally said to be able to take them through the end of the year. Now it's expected to only last for 5 months. I didn't hear a lot of Ukraine in where all of this money is going. A House committee will hold a public hearing on UFOs next Tuesday for the first time in decades, as Congress presses the Pentagon and other national security agencies for more answers on reports of mysterious aircraft violating protected airspace. I might live stream this because it will be interesting, if nothing else. The session before the House Intelligence Committee's Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Proliferation Subcommittee comes 5 months after the National Defense Authorization Act required the military to establish a permanent UFO research office and take a series of other steps to collect and investigate reports of unidentified aerial phenomena. Andre Carson said in a statement yesterday, quote, "The American people expect and deserve their leaders in government and intelligence to seriously evaluate and respond to any potential national security risks, especially those we do not fully understand." Boo. It's like the, God, what was that show with Fox and Mulder? I don't fucking remember. Anyway. Since coming to Congress, I've been focused on the issue of unidentified aerial phenomena as both a national security threat and an interest of great importance to the American public. Testifying before the panel will be Ronald Moultrie, the Pentagon's top intelligence official, and Scott Bray, the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. The Director of National Intelligence issued a public report in June of 2021 at the request of the Senate Intelligence Committee that outlined 144 reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, in recent years, including 18 incidents in which observers reported unusual UAP movement patterns or flight characteristics. Closed-door briefings on the Pentagon's progress in carrying out the legislation have begun in recent weeks, but a number of lawmakers expressed dismay that the Pentagon is still not taking the topic seriously. Well, if you're expecting Congress to take anything but themselves seriously, you're in for a very, very sad and disappointing day. According to this article, Bitcoin investors are in panic mode as the controversial Terra USD stablecoin slips further from its intended $1 peg. Terra USD, or UST, sank below 70 cents for the first time late Monday as holders continued to flee the token in what some have described as a bank run. The token fell as low as 62 cents before regaining ground to trade at 90 cents yesterday. Created by Singapore-based Terraform Labs in 2018, UST is what's known as an algorithmic stablecoin. Part of the Terra blockchain project is meant to track the value of the dollar, like fellow stablecoins Tether and USDC. UST is important for Bitcoin investors as Luna Foundation Guard, an organization supporting the Terra project, is sitting on billions of dollars in Bitcoin that could potentially be dumped onto the market at any point. Every professional investor in crypto has one eye on UST yesterday, watching to see, or today, I guess, watching to see if it can maintain its peg to the dollar, said Matt Hogan, Chief Investment Officer at Bitwise Asset Management. There's clearly a significant risk in the market. In simple terms, the Terra protocol destroys and creates new units of UST and Luna to adjust supply. When the price of UST falls below the dollar, it can be taken out of circulation and exchanged for Luna, making UST supply more scarce and boosting its price. To further complicate things, Terra's creator Do Kwon, not sure how you say it, bought $3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin to provide a backstop for UST in times of crisis. The theory was that UST could eventually be redeemed for Bitcoin instead of Luna, but this is untested and hasn't yet been put into practice. The Chinese military deployed forces all around the island of Taiwan over the weekend in a set of large-scale military drills that one Chinese military analyst called a rehearsal of possible real action. On Monday, the Chinese People's Liberation Army announced its Eastern Theater Command organized maritime aerial, conventional, missile, and other forces around Taiwan and carried out drills around the island from Friday to Sunday. The Eastern Theater Command said the drills were intended to, quote, test and improve the joint operations capability of multiple services and arms. Song Jiangping, a Chinese mainland military analyst, told the Chinese state publication that the drills were like a rehearsal of a possible real action of military conflict in the Taiwan Straits. All PLA forces will play their roles as they will surround the entire island, seal it off, launch effective strikes. He went further to say by having the Liaoning aircraft carrier group positioned east of Taiwan, the PLA not only cuts off possible reinforcements from foreign interference forces, but also launches attacks on military bases east of the Taiwan island and intercepts any escape attempts from secessionist forces. Song predicted more training courses will be added, more types, on larger numbers of equipment, and will be deployed, and more frequent drills will take place if Taiwan secessionists and external interference forces do not stop. I made my prediction. I believe that China will invade Taiwan by the end of the year. That is your Wednesday edition of Everything Yesterday this morning. I love you guys. Thanks for being patient with me. And you guys take care and have a wonderful day.